Hello, everybody from Interact. My name is Ori Keren. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LinearB, and I'm excited to have this discussion today about developer experience. This is a topic that we've seen a lot of companies starting to invest in it, a topic that I'm really passionate about it, but to be honest, a topic that I don't know all the facts on it. This is why I have two great people join to this panel today with me. So we have Ishai Berry, who is the CTO of LinearB, and Avishag Sar, who is a team leader in our R&D in LinearB as well. Avishag, it's great to have you.
We're glad to be here.
Yes, great. Let's jump right to our topic. So developer experience, often like we call it like DX. I think, at least for me, when I began like reading about it, it wasn't like really sure what is it like the user experience, but for developers, what is it exactly? Of course, I know a little bit more now, but I wanted to ask you, what is the X for you? Abhishek, let's start with you. What do you, when you hear developer experience or DX, what's your definition for it?
So for me, developer experience can be separated into, I think, three main categories. So the first thing is the setup, like the basic setup that you have. Monitor, machines, mouse, keyboards, and all of that. It sounds like naive, but it is important and crucial. And we're not talking about like the best setup there is in the industry, but like more of the setup that will provide the best experience for your developer. And it can be, individually different between one to another.
So that's really interesting. Sorry for stopping you. But you mean this is the actual like, how do I see it? Where do I see it? How does my keyboard look like?
Exactly.
It has a great impact on like how happy I am as a developer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is, I think, would be like the first category. And the second one will be more about like the people that you have around you, if there are people, because not every developer works with people. So, but if you are lucky enough to work with people.
What do you mean, you work with robots? What does it mean you're working with people?
But there are many like freelancers or self.
Work alone.
Yeah. So you like, there are many developers that just work alone because, and they're not used to work with people. But once you do work with people, you want to provide a good communication between your people. So it's very crucial to your dev experience, right? Because you don't want, it will impact your performance, the people that are surrounding you, not only when you develop, but like in general in life. So it has a lot of impact on your dev experience. And the third category will be probably everything that's related to dev tools. If it's extensions or special tools that you install in your machine, then I would also like mention practices that you engage in your team or group, and CI/CD, etc. So that will be like the three categories. And the combination of all of them will start to define.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we're going to talk about how you measure it, and I'm starting to imagine like how do you measure that, when somebody new comes in, they have all the all the setup keyboards, and it's interesting, but we'll get there. So Ishai, like from your position, you're a CTO. How would you define it? Like in a different way? Like, do you see it like from a different perspective or a complementary perspective?
Yeah. First of all, I think many people use developer experience as a term to describe both what is the experience of users, developers that are using my APIs, using my companies or my team's outputs. So at least part of that term refers to external people, not our employees or people working with me, but people that are using the code that I write, my open source libraries that I create, etc. But if I'm looking at developer experience as what is the experience of developers on my team or in my company or in the organization that I care about, then I agree with Avishag. It's a lot about, I would say, anything that is above the layer of employee experience, right? The office vibe and the kind of refreshments you have in the kitchen, that's employee experience, right? It affects everyone. But tools like your chair and your screen affect developer work more than they affect people in other types or other skills. There's, I would say, everything that is related to what is happening to me day over day as I try to do my job. And it's because people writing software rely a lot on processes and tools like CI/CD, like what's my pipeline? What does it take to create a local environment to run everything end to end, reduce dependencies on others, but also communication. What is the process, the human process to get something done?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen over the years, but also talking with a lot of leaders, developers want to be productive, and developers who are not able to be productive because of any reason are sad. So I would eventually it's a lot about being productive because developers want to, get things done and see that they actually impact the world. And if I'm stuck because another person needs to help me and I can't get to them because of communication breakdowns, that's going to be detrimental to my experience. My, I think, earliest view on this, before this was called DX, is Joel Spolsky's famous 12 points. I think it's a blog from the
Legendary one.
Yeah, from 22 years ago, where he basically lists 12 things you should be looking for as a developer that wants to work for a company. Things like, is there a source code control? Is there tests? Is there a local development? And these become very famous. So I think that's the first Bible or 10, 12 commandments for developer experience that I've seen.
Maybe Joel was the prophet of the X.
I think so. They didn't call it that way, but yes.
Yeah, so it's a good segue about how you call things, and let's talk about the broader ecosystem. I've read an article, I think, I don't remember who wrote it, but that kind of said, hey, you know what? Developer experience is actually a different word for DevOps. What's the difference? DevOps, they're also in charge of making sure that the pipeline is working and it's clean and it's moving fast. And I'm seeing of course opinions to both ways. I see a company like Honeycomb, and they're spending a lot of time trying to define it. So how do you see the difference between DevOps and developer experience? Let's start with you, Shai.
To me, it's about the intent. There's a lot of overlap in what people in DevOps do. A lot of that affects developer experience. But the intent of DevOps is typically to make sure that we can effectively support our operational environment, make our product to be running, our updates of the product should be safe. If that's the intent, yes, you get some DX benefits, but it's not the same as saying my intent or my position or my role is to make sure that developers are more productive. For example, local development environment is not a DevOps thing directly. And if I only care about my production pipeline, then maybe local env is not part of my job. But for developers, working without a local env is very hard. So a lot of overlap, but the intent is what matters.
So if I'm a director of DevOps, I want to make sure that you can deploy easy, that you can...
Yeah, deploy, rollback, save, all of that.
And if I'm a director of DX, it's my intent, I want to make sure that you're happy, that you can operate.
Right. And that probably includes a quick way to pipeline deploy and a quick way to roll back, because at 3 a.m. when I'm fixing problems, I want this to be quick. But my intent is different, so the ways I manage it are different.
And it's also interesting because when you are working and you get stuck, your first address will be probably to reach to the DevOps, but they will not have the answer all of the time because they are not really aware of everything that we do in the dev team, and we are not aware of their tasks on day to day. So it's also an interesting thing because you find yourself reaching to them as the resolvers of unknown issues that you might have, but it's actually a lack or a gap in your dev experience. that
Yeah, it's like
interrupt
DevOps
you.
is the most automated part of DevX today, right?
Yeah.
Getting better screens or better chairs is very manual.
Mhm.
DevOps is already automated. There's already discipline. There's tools. So that's the part which gets more attention and sometimes quicker solutions. But if I, as a developer, have bad requirements coming in from product, how is DevOps going to help me?
Yeah.
That's a DX problem.
Yeah.
And where does platform engineering plays in? And SRE and all of that. I am hearing those terms sometimes like being used as well in this ecosystem. Do you have like a view on that?
So platform engineering will, while SRE will talk about the human resource that will provide you more reliable platform to work on, platform engineering will actually provide you the platform. So they will provide you the tools or the technology that will give you the best experience. So it's actually, in my opinion, or in my point of view, it will be like automate the SRE role into just, I would say, more easy way to resolve things when they are automated.
Yeah, I like to use the intent again. SRE to me lives very far on the side of
just make sure things are working.
Yeah, this is runtime, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about SLAs, SLOs.
You're saying runtime actually
My
production. Like,
my product as it's serving customers.
Yeah.
Platform engineering is a lot about, can I extract and make some common platform, common code, common services, so that when developers are working on a new capability, they have less work to do and they have an easier task, and we can maybe increase velocity. This helps the X, but the intent is to be more efficient and do like, let's not write the same service twice in two slightly different flavors. Let's reuse things. That's the way I think about these.
I think, like, another thing I want to add there, it's more like, when you are trying to help someone with a problem that he has. So there is a phrase in Hebrew that I will translate it to English. So you don't want to give the fish as an answer, but you want to give the
fishing rod.
Yeah, the fishing
Probably
rod.
comes from Chinese.
Well, I gotta hear it later in Hebrew.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to platform engineering, we are more focused about the fishing rod. Yeah. So, and less about the fishes.
Yeah. Do you think it's like evolution play? There was like, well, I was still developing when there was Waterfall. And then in 2001, there was the Agile Manifesto that did amazing things like the software. And I would say like 2014, DevOps. Is the X like the 2022 thing, like on that same plane of evolution?
So,
Go ahead.
It's a very interesting question, because I've seen like the developer role evolving through the years. So I don't know, 10 years ago, and even like even back, like before, even before that, we had like a really defined separation between many roles, right? So we had QAs, and we had DevOps, we had IT, we had the developers that are, even now, there are companies that still keeping like the traditional separation, but we see more companies and more groups goes through this, I would say, role evolving, that developer is now responsible for security. He will be responsible for the DevOps sometimes. He or she will be responsible for QA. So we are now writing tests. That it was not always like that.
Yeah.
And more. So now I think we came to a point where the experience is the next step, because I will give you an example in our company. We don't have IT here, right? And we do have like few DevOps people here, but we do our DevOps to ourselves, like internal ourselves.
Part of the dev work.
It's part of the pipeline, of the dev pipeline that we do. We are also responsible for our QA, and we do all of that part by ourselves.
I think this shift left that you're describing, a lot of things that used to have specialized skills and responsibilities are now part of the developer responsibility.
Yeah.
So software is eating the world. I think this was said in 2014, and it's happening more and more.
Mm-hmm.
This makes the developers one of the crucial assets for any company,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that like your crucial assets, which are responsible for more and more of the pie of the business running. Actually, every business of scale now is a software business.
Yeah.
So developer experience and not just the productivity, but the whole range of what it looks to work and be effective as a developer becomes now the front and center in what people care about.
Yeah.
So I think it is an evolution. It's not replacing. I don't think it's going to replace DevOps or replace questions with a different intent, like making sure that my runtime is great is a different intent. But if we're seeing more and more people in dedicated roles whose job is to make sure the developer experience is great, not just to have happy people, but also this means that my software creation process in the company is robust and is effective and is scalable.
Mm-hmm.
This is all part of DX.
So you would have like somebody owning DevOps and somebody owning developer experience. You're saying it's not over, like...
Yeah, I think like a DX czar or chief. What I'm seeing is some evolution from project managers. Sometimes, 10, 15 years ago, VPs of engineering would have project managers to help them with things like that. So that would like R&D operations, project management, some of those are evolving into more defined DX roles, like make sure that everything is great for our people and process.
Yeah. And I think it's like more like hot topic now these days. It's because of the evolvement that the developer role like got into. Because we are now doing like, I'm not saying a lot more, but we are doing like more diverse kind of tasks on our day-to-day. It's now, we now as developers, we see like many kind of problems that maybe 10 years ago developers didn't have to handle with. So
I would say 10 years ago, developer experience was very bad, but there was no way around
Yeah.
it. You had to wait 3 months for someone to provision a server because someone has to buy the server.
Yeah, now you can
and
code your infrastructure.
So my developer experience was capped at very low. Now we have a chance to actually have good DX because everything is automated. We have cloud,
or at least talk about good DX.
Yes. But I think it's because things have improved.
Yep.
Yeah, so say like because things have improved, shifted left, developers can do much more, code their infrastructure, their security, their everything. Now there's the need like, and this is why it's such a hot topic.
Yes.
Okay, great. I think we're like at a good place in defining what it is. Let's start to shift the conversation towards measuring. So when you hear, okay, let's measure our developer experience, it's a complex topic because there's a bunch of views on how it should be done. But let's start with metrics. What are like a classic DX metrics that Abhishek, that you think are important to be measured?
So there are two ways to measure like dev experience, right? You have the traditional metrics that you can measure by, let's say, DORA metrics, right? So we all heard about these. So we have this group of metrics, but we also can measure it, by simply do one-on-one with your team members and talk about it in retros and these kind of meetings. So this also can provide some sense of how happy your developers are in your team. But if I'm talking about the more traditional metrics that I am looking into, I think on a daily basis, First, I want to say that I think that every team has their own needs, and they are probably will look for different metrics because we are all developing, even in the same group. Some teams will look for something. I mean, some teams will find my metrics not that useful, but I usually go for cycle time, that I'm very interested in keeping it low because of our practice in the team, and also pull request size. So these are, I think, the top two metrics that I'm constantly measuring, and I'm looking for probably every day in the morning to see that we are in a good track.
That's super interesting because you're saying these are like cycle time, often called like lead time for changes. It's like taking right as it is from the DORA metric, and you're saying, and PR size, we talked about it a lot in LinearB, how PR size is like the early indicator of like great DORA metrics. You're saying, yeah, these are great like delivery metrics, but they're actually also like a developer experience metrics, because if my cycle time is poor, my developers are not happy. I remember I saw a lecture that you did, and one sentence caught me: happy pipeline, happy developers.
Yeah.
So in your mind, viewing cycle time, viewing like those type of metrics are actually developer experience metrics.
Yes, both cycle time and PR, I wouldn't forget it. And PR size, I wouldn't forget this one, because to me, these two, I mean, I take it like from my day-to-day examples. So if you have a really big PR, we are all experienced with big PRs. We know it's not fun. We know we don't want it. We know it's bad. It's not something that we discovered it just now. We know that for years now. So I know that if my average PR size in the team is big, it points that the quality is questionable, and also that my developers are wasting time on things that we can save time on. And same applies to cycle time, right? So if you have a really long cycle time, something went wrong in the middle. So something just is not right there. And we don't need to be an elite team with, I don't know, half-day cycle time, but we don't want to go to the other side of delivering PR in a week. We don't want to go there. So I always like find these two really crucial when it comes to my dev experience.
Yeah, I love it. I like it a lot because we're talking in Interact, and we're going to talk more about like we're calling it the ETA of dev productivity, and what are the important pillars. And people kind of think, okay, developer productivity for developers is different from developer productivity for managers, but this is where it's a win-win, because if my lead time for changes is cycle time is short, yeah, we deliver more features. And also, hey, here's a cool thing: the developers are happy.
Yeah.
They don't have to wait a lot. So
yeah, I think the assumption that productivity is something managers want and employees don't, is not. They may be, correct for 100 years ago, but for skilled knowledge workers like creative people like software developers, they want to be productive. And when they're not productive, and I think the metrics you mentioned, they're uncovering some universal truth. No one likes context switches. No one likes too much whip. No one likes to be stuck. So long cycle time will mean I have larger whip. It will mean I have more context switches and longer context switches. And it probably means that in some places that I got stuck.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for someone, and I can't move forward. So it uncovers those pretty universal causes of agony. And the other cause of agony is large PRs. Regardless of the productivity problems they bring, everyone
agony.
Yeah, I like when I review a PR, this like over some size and complexity is like, oh, this is now a chore I have to go through, which becomes an agony instead of a nice thing. And it's I see both PRs in day-to-day work, and the difference is not linear. Like if it's a small PR, it's really fun to look at it, understand what it does, give some comments and move on. If it's large, it's like, oh, okay, well, like my head is, so this is like direct agony.
Yeah. This is interesting. We're seeing, we're saying developer experience is a new thing, but there's also investments in even going through the cloud can improve the developer experience.
Mhm.
Kubernetes can improve the developer experience. Deploying a great CI/CD platform can improve the developer experience. So basically, there are native capabilities on top of measuring and bringing into the awareness, etc., that are helping with developer experience. Avishag, what is the biggest gap that you see inside those native capabilities that is a blind spot right now in improving the developer experience?
So, as you mentioned, moving to cloud or engaging more CI/CD tools, things like that are only covering a part of the dev pipeline. So if you are looking at the whole dev pipeline that you have the coding part, which is basically your developer or you sometimes developing your code. We have the part that comes after will be the what we call review part. So sometimes it's through pull requests or similar entities like that. And after that, we have the development part, which involving CI/CD, and these days it's covered really well.
I mean the deployment part.
Yeah, deployment part. And even in the coding part, right? We have today. It will be a lot quicker when you have the right setup and when you have the right tools for it. For example, Copilot, which is an amazing tool that really boosting your coding part. But the part in the middle is taking most of the time in this whole cycle. So we're talking about the review, which sometimes can take, I think, you can tell us in the data, it can take, I think, two-thirds part of the whole process.
Yeah, 2/3 of the time to get a PR done at the end.
And this is I think the big gap that we have till now, and the one that we are still trying to resolve, because it depends on human resources, and it's not yet. We couldn't find any good automation for that part, and that will be, I think, the biggest part.
This is why in LinearB we're investing in what we call continuous merge. We're the first company trying to natively solve this problem, and we started with a product called Gitstream. Ishai, can you tell us a little bit more about what is Gitstream and maybe one or two use cases that it helps solve for our customers?
Sure. So Avishag mentioned the pull request cycle, or the cycle, the process that happens when I'm basically finished coding my piece of work and I need to get this reviewed, approved by my peers, and eventually merged into the code base. And this is on one side a very human heavy process. Most companies today use pull requests, even though originally that model was for very loosely coupled groups of people doing open source. This has become the de facto standard for companies developing software together, even in the same room. A lot of good things in PRs or pull requests or merge requests, if you prefer that. It's human heavy. And today, in most cases, it's very uniform. All the code changes have to go through the same process.
Yes, stay there for 1 second, because it's really interesting. You said I remember working, there was no such thing as PR. I would call somebody to do a code review.
And I remember working when there was no source control.
You have to back it up somewhere. But you're saying open source and all that movement, when people were distributed, kind of contributed. And of course, GitHub, which was a major influence on those movements, kind of brought the same methodology that used in distributed open source into mainstream enterprise development. Yeah. I'm hearing people saying, what do you mean? You're not doing a review on every PR or 2 reviews, you're not compliant. It's now in people have connected to the actual SOC 2 compliance or whatever, or ISO.
You have here sometimes compliance chases technology, or sometimes the use of technology is done to satisfy some compliance requirements, which may not be up to date or adjusted to the best way to solve the real problem. So yes, in many places, there is a saying, everyone has to review all the codes. Someone has to review 4 eyes principle or whatever. But in many cases, when you scratch the surface, you understand that you can be compliant without doing that. As long as you have a mechanism, as long as you have a managed way and an articulated way to say what kind of changes are safe, can be merged without reviews, what kind of changes need this kind of review, what kind of change needs maybe a deeper review. So going back to what I said before, today it's uniform. Most companies, almost all companies, just do one principle, required 4-eye principle, and all code changes go through the same generic pipe. One way to battle the problems this brings is to have very small PRs. Okay, I'm fighting this problem with, okay, let's make the changes very small. So this
like Avishag said.
Like Avishag says, and like we all like, but again, you can be smarter. You can think about, do all my code changes really need another human?
Mm-hmm.
Today it's very cheap to run tests, extensive tests, and a lot of the DevOps and the ability to even deploy to staging or to ephemeral environments have made, they're compensating in my ability to trust the code change, not to mention all kinds of checks. So there's many ways in which I can say this has been tested or verified, even if there's no human involved. And sometimes the code changes, maybe this is just white space formatting, or maybe I'm just changing a document or some graphic asset. If we start thinking about these, a lot of the pull requests, a lot of the changes people make to code bases don't really need another human. And this asynchronous kind of, let's wait for someone to look at this and provide me with comments, and then I respond, and then they look again, all that can be skipped. When we looked at the data that we have here in LinearB, we saw that between 20 and 40% of PRs in different organizations and teams are simply approved with a dummy comment like LGTM or something. It means someone like went through the motion of approving, but it's a rubber stamp. Yeah. So you're already not really looking at the code. Let's make that formal. Let's make a decision that we can skip some PRs, define very neatly which PRs get to go through a fast lane, like no approval, automated merge. There's a bunch of flavors. And Gitstream is our solution to give the dev team the control through configuration that lives in the repo. This is our dev process for reviewing and merging PRs.
Yeah. What I like about it, it's basically the first time we're classifying PRs. Like you and I come from security background. The first thing you do if you want to find the crown jewels, you classify your information. You say, this is the risk information. Same things, instead of looking at all PRs the same way, let's classify them. Let's find the ones that you said, hey, these are like simple ones that can go, which is simple bot review. Avishag was talking about Copilot. This is Copilot for reviewing the simple PRs. But there's also the other side, right? So if I'm touching something very, very important, or let's say even I'm using a deprecated API, why do I need another human cycle? Let's have the bot say, hey, you're using a deprecated API. So you don't need a human cycle to tell you, hey, you got to change something.
Yeah, so classifying lets us talk about the fast lane, or, can we do less reviews, but also can we do more reviews where it really matters? Now I can say for these PRs, let's get 2 people to review it, because I classified the PR. I know that it is touching something sensitive. This could be a sensitive service. This could be a place in the code that is known to have problems, a bunch of options to help me classify. So I can classify, I can label my PRs to help people, because people are always going to be involved. Help people understand what's going on, make some automated decisions, and basically get the right process for the right job and the right process for the right change.
Yeah.
And that's a very smart way to look at the PR problem.
That's really cool. Well, and we'll probably talk about it a lot more in Interact, because that's one of the things that we're heavily investing in. But let's go back to the measuring part. we talked about metrics, right? We said like cycle time, PR size. You added, maybe whip overload or burnout or those type of things. What about the other camp that kind of says we should use surveys because the developers know? Like if the true essence of developer experience is like, how does it look like to develop a product from a developer perspective? Let's ask them. So let's go and put a survey and asking them where are the bottlenecks, etc. What is your take on? Is the right way empiric metrics? Is the right way a survey?
I think you must have both. I think you have to mix both kind of signals. Again, you're talking about humans. Developers are subspecies of humans. You have to ask. You have to have the soft measurement, like surveys, NPS, periodic, but they have to be, I think, related to some framework of how to think about these. So you can, grade yourself or have your developers grade you on, grade their environment on specific things like the ease to begin writing code, or to ramp up in a team, or how often do I get stuck? So I think having a framework that helps you make the surveys and the questions and help you understand and maybe even compare where you stand with industry benchmarks or with, and not make it a completely free format, but you have to mix those and metrics and see how they work together. I don't see any way around it.
This is cool. Okay, so we said what it is. We said how do you start measuring. Let's talk about rollouts and improvement. When it's really interesting because when Abhishek was saying about how there's a lot of overlap between some of the delivery DORA metrics to the developer experience metrics, something caught me that we in LinearB have we exist almost 4 years now, and we're seeing what it takes to roll out a metrics program, right? We know that if there's only a buy-in from a manager and not a buy-in on the right things to measure from the rest of the organization, probably not great things will happen. We also know the developers and team leaders are very busy. And if you just say to them, okay, can you start measuring the right metrics? Probably they will be gravitated towards the day-to-day and their tasks and not. So that's why I think we've seen, that's why we actually started anyway, because we saw failed VSM implementations, right? It's hard to roll it out.
Yes.
How do you roll out a successful DX implementation? Is it a top-down initiative? I'm a VP, I want to invest in it, I learn, I go and I buy tools and say, hey, everybody, developer experience is important. Or is it a bottom-up? Can developers in a democratic way say, oh, we're starting to do it? Where do you stand? Is it again, the balance between them, or what do you think will happen here?
I think most of these questions, the answer is both. So in the top-down world, it begins with the intent, with someone caring and saying, I want to know where I stand. I want to be good at this. I want to improve. This can be someone getting a DX role or someone getting DX responsibilities on top of their role. And some top brass saying, we need to get better dev experience. That's typically how this begins top down. And then rolling out a program, yes, it's about understanding what to measure. It's about getting the right tools. And it's about engaging your managers, your team leads, and your developers in using those tools and being part of the process. We talked about shifting left. You can't do anything in the software world without harnessing the developers and without that being part of the code. So any successful DX rollout program needs to involve the people, not just as subjects to ask, how are you doing today? Or take here your heartbeat, but also as part of the solution. We've seen that with productivity. I think it's the same for DX. If it's just a manager looking at some DX metrics and dashboards every month, that's not going to improve. When looking at bottom up, and this goes, even back to Joel's 12 points, they quickly became like interview questions for the interviewee asking the company, do you have this? Otherwise, I'm not going to go to work for a company that doesn't have source control, source code control. Just as it became a criteria. So DX is now starting, and I think continuing to be selection criteria for strong employees and developers to choose where they want to work. And they go and implement internal tools where they can and where they have either permission or initiative to improve their day-to-day. Some of the DevOps projects begin like that. So it begins atomic. I'm just improving my area and maybe my team's area, and it will bubble. And the more we give tools to developers to solve this for themselves, for their own team, then like that's the way developers really like to adopt things. Give me something that I can use and I can control. Ideally, I can code it. It's like I'm thinking about the way I configure it, the way I use it as extension of my coding work, and I can make my experience get better. At some point, you need to get the organization and my other teams, the managers involved, because you want to maybe roll out a larger change. But I think if we talk about Gitstream, that's a great example of something that developers can take directly, use in the repo, and begin bubbling up and out this improvement to their day-to-day experience.
Yeah. So you're saying like the 12 points caught me again, that you think developer experience will be a criteria or is becoming a criteria. Yeah. Like I'm not not going to come in.
People quit their jobs over DX.
How much time it will take me like to deploy code to production? Like how much time? So you're saying like it's going to be a hiring, like if you have good DX, you will be hire like better people and retain them.
I think strong developers have been doing this for a decade.
Yeah, they just like didn't give it like that name.
Yeah, so they have been selecting companies where developer experience was good, even if it didn't have a name or an owner, but it was, it was good. And they could be productive and they could grow and scale and not get stuck. And they're quitting jobs where this becomes a pain.
Yeah.
That's already happening. It's going to get stronger, I think, as more, as DX becomes more formalized or more visible. But I think it's already happening for a while.
Do you have like a good story of like a very poor developer experience? Not necessarily, hopefully not in this company, from your past that you said, okay, like everywhere I go, I can't debug it. I can't like test it. So that's it. Like I'm going to go home today. That pops to your mind. It's okay if not, because I have another question.
Yeah. What pops to my mind is one of early customers of my, when I was a consultant, where this was like we were tasked with finding and then fixing a production bug. That there was no way to run locally or to reconstruct in anything but production. So very long cycles to make some changes to production code so that maybe we can trap the bug happening or cause it to appear more often. We did some hacks to increase the probability of getting that bug.
So you actually put the bug more so you can.
Yeah, we knew it was happening in some scenarios, so we did some artificial things to make it happen a bit more so that the chance it would happen while we were watching would grow and maybe prove our thesis. But every cycle, like getting even like logging lines or anything into the code base and into production was weeks. So you have an idea and it takes you weeks just to get there, not to mention failed builds, just getting there. I think that was an extreme case of a slice of the DX being very, very poor.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much for this discussion, Ishai. Thank you very much for the discussion, Avishag. This has been great. Thank you, the Interact viewers. If you really want to dig further into like developer experience, we recommend you check out LinearB. We have, of course, some of this covered in our core product. We also have like this Gitstream beta product that's about to go GA. Check it out. You can find it in linearb.io and get started. Thank you.